That started off really good, and then I lost the melody. Whatever. Today is one of those days, I'm sure we've all had them, where you have nothing to do. And so you're like, I'm going to get everything done. And then you wait till the last minute. Yeah, so here we go. I'm getting this review done. Unlike the others, this was not as fresh because I just had so much to do, which is why I was happy about today, only not to do anything. So, today's book is the third installment of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants by Brashares, and it is Girls in Pants, the third summer of the Sisterhood. I'm gonna say it wasn't my favorite. So far, it's my least favorite, and it's my least favorite for many reasons. I think particularly because if you've seen my reviews for the previous two, you'll know that I've commented on the writing style and almost kind of the datedness of the storytelling and the writing, but it wasn't a problem. It was more nostalgic than anything for me. It just felt more free. Like Brashares wasn't restricted by all these demands on how she writes a book. But I felt like Girls in Pants was really juvenile. Like there was a lot of telling, and there were a lot of voice tags, quite a few adverbs, the things that I understand why we're not supposed to use them, why it's highly emphasized these days, don't do it. And so I thought it brought the writing down. But the other thing about this book that I think made it my least favorite is I couldn't remember what happened. I've read these books multiple times, maybe 4 or 5 times. So you'd think I'd remember what would happen in each book. And I think some of the blame lies in the fact that there's 2 movies of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and the second one combines books 3 and 4. And so some of my memories are confused by the movie because for some reason that's what keeps popping into my head as to what happens. But honestly, as I said before, I don't like Lena. I think she's boring. She has the most potential. She is the one that I remember always wanting to like and wanting more things from, yet she never delivers. And so one of the perspectives that I can't remember what goes on was Lena. Even sitting here now, I'm like, what happened with Lena? It's possible that I also mix her storyline up with her 4th book storyline because they're very, very similar. And Lena enrolls in a summer art class. Her dad finds her drawing a naked man and he withdraws her, and then she has to figure out how to get to art school on her own because from that point on her parents refuse to pay for it. And then in the 4th book, she is taking part in another art class, and we'll leave that storyline till then, but that one is far more interesting to me than this one. The other storyline I couldn't remember was Tibby. Her storyline, it starts strong because she and Brian are finally gonna get something going, only for her little sister to get hurt, and then she harbors this massive amount of guilt for the entire book. And then that brings me to the 3rd reason. I know I said 2, but there are actually 3. There's many, but there's 3 biggies. And the 3rd biggie is that I thought that this book lacked development. The only character I thought grew from 1 to 3 was B. And it might be because she has a running storyline. It starts in the 1st book, it is readdressed in the 2nd book, and then it is continued in this book in which she meets Eric Richmond once more, and she has to reevaluate her feelings towards him, and she has to come to terms with how she had behaved the first time that they met, and then change his mind about her, basically show him that she's grown, she's a different person. And so that's the only storyline that I thought was of any value for this entire book. Carmen, as I've said, she's the one that I am the most like. But in each book, something happens in her life and she has an overreaction to it. Tibby judges people and can't see the truth about things and kind of sulks about in every single book. And then Lena is just too afraid to actually be a person in every book. That's what happens in these storylines too, is Carmen discovers that her mother's pregnant. In the last book, she had struggled with the fact that her mother was dating. In this book, she has married the man and now she's pregnant, and Carmen's like, I don't like that, and now I'm going to uproot all of my plans. I'm going to change everything that I was going to do because I can't handle the fact that my mom is going to start this new life without me. That is essentially what she did in book 1, the way she behaved with her dad. She didn't like the fact that he was getting married and didn't tell her, and she didn't like her soon-to-be stepfamily, so she had a hissy fit, a pity party, threw a rock through a window, and then left. In book 2, didn't like that her mom was dating, and so she completely ignores the boy that she's supposed to be dating, and she's so center-focused that she can't function. And once again, she is having this overreaction to the fact that her mom's life is moving on. It gets monotonous to see in book 1 how Tibby hates the fact that she's stuck by herself in this town all summer without her friends. She's going to film this succumentary, basically making fun of everybody. She has this extremely cynical view of life until she meets Bailey, who shows her the truth. And then in book 2, she goes to New York for a film program for the summer, and she wants to get into the wrong kind of crowd. Like, she wants to be with the people who she thinks are cool, but really they're not that great. They judge everybody. They're superficial. And then come in Bailey and Brian to show her the error of her ways. And then in this book, she hates the fact that her parents use her as a built-in babysitter, only for her sister Catherine, because she's 17 in this book, 18, and they've just graduated high school, and her little brother and sister are significantly younger, 4 or 5. At one point early in the book, Catherine's like, I want apples from that tree, and Tibby's like, I'm going to completely disregard anything you have to say. And then at the first opportunity, Catherine tries to climb the tree and just happens to be through the window in Tibby's bedroom. She falls, she cracks her skull, breaks her collarbone, and Tibby just can't handle it. Like, she cannot see the forest through the trees. All she does is blame herself and literally does nothing the entire book. Like, she has a job in movie theater, and she does at some point reevaluate her view of a coworker, which I thought was completely unnecessary. I was like, I didn't understand why it had to be there, but like, what did she accomplish? Honestly, I don't know, except that she had a greater value for her siblings in the end. And then Lena, what did happen? I forgot again. Oh yeah, the art class. In some ways, she does have some growth, because her dad withdraws her from the class and then tells her he has never agreed with her decision to go to art school. He thinks it's a completely useless degree, so they're not going to pay for it. So now she has to figure out how to do that. She then lies to her parents about what she's doing, because her dad forces her into a job, and she lies to her parents about taking extra shifts so that she can go to this art class anyways. Then when she drops the news about art school to her teacher's like, well, you can get a scholarship, and this is what you need to do. So she sits down and she draws a picture of her teacher, and her teacher, who is in a wheelchair, is like, it's a great picture, but you didn't draw the chair. And this is just a metaphor for, you need to dig down deep. You need to approach what is scary. She draws portraits of all the members of her family, plus Carmen's stepbrother Paul, which is another storyline that I was super disappointed about. So she does grow in that sense, because when she draws these portraits, we see how she is having to peel back the layers of her assumptions about these people to see who they truly are beneath. So I liked that, but I was just like, what is Lena doing? She has no storyline. She has no personality. So I've basically gone through the book and told you about all their plot lines, a little bit more about Lena and Carmen, and B is that Lena's grandfather had died, so her father decides to bring grandmother Valia over from Greece to live with them, and she's completely miserable because he doesn't want to upset her, and in doing so takes away everything that would remind her of home, and because of that, instead of just being sad, she becomes bitter. So then Carmen agrees to take care of Valia for the summer, and I have some issues with Carmen because aside from her mother, she does meet this new love interest, and yet again it's like she has this internal struggle the entire book as to good Carmen versus bad Carmen, because she keeps running into this guy Win while she's doing good deeds, and she's like, but that's not who I really am. I'm not really a good person, but that's who he thinks I am, and so I can't like him. I can't pursue something with him because I'm not who he thinks I am. And that's kind of, it reminds me of one of the things that has always stuck with me about this series is the lack of communication. The miscommunication makes this series fantastic and absolutely horrible, because all I want to do is scream at them and say, just open your mouth and say it. Like, why? You could fix so many issues and save so much heartache if you just opened your mouth. Anyways, Carmen decides, I will watch Valia this summer, and they have a really rocky relationship. She takes Valia to the hospital for something, but before they go, they stop for ice cream. Valia slips and hurts herself. This is when she meets Win. She ends up doing other little things, like she helps take Catherine to get a checkup. She ends up being her mother's Lamaze partner, which I'm like, how realistic was that whole situation, in which it's this birth class was scheduled in the middle of the day? So no wonder, I mean, I think David, the husband, was out of town or something, like some work emergency came up. But was he really going to be there in the middle of the day? How many parents, how many working mothers and fathers are going to be able to just drop everything to go to a birth class in the middle of the day? Anyways, at the end of that, Valia ends up being able to go home because Carmen convinces Lena's parents that Valia is miserable and it would be best for her to be able to go back to Greece. And I'm like, I know that these girls are really good friends. And to some extent, even though their mothers are no longer friends, I guess they have a good relationship with the mothers themselves. But I'm like, how much influence does she have over Lena's mother that she can be like, oh, this is what needs to happen? I had a really hard time. Sorry, my hair is... It was supposed to be a really good hair day because I had some important things going on today and I didn't quite get what I wanted. But anyways, B, as I said, she was my favorite because I felt like she's the only one who continues to develop. The thing that happened in the first book is sort of stems from another incident, and that is her mother commits suicide. So this, in the first book, she sleeps with Eric Richmond, who is one of the coaches at her soccer camp, and this sends her into a really deep depression. In the second book, she works through those issues. She comes to terms with things, she opens her eyes to see things, and she is able to be B again. And then in the third book, she is now a counselor, or she is now a coach as well at a soccer camp. It just so happens that Eric is there. They are thrust together in one of those extracurricular activities, and she's like, I don't think I can do this, but I have no way out of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be his friend. I'm going to take all the pressure off the table, and I'm going to show him I'm a completely different person so that we can heal this relationship. I mean, she's still in love with him. He's basically still in love with her. So he goes and he breaks up with his girlfriend, and he comes back, and it was a situation. made worse by miscommunication. And so he comes back and she's like, I don't know what to do about him. I don't know how to behave. He just up and left and didn't tell anybody what was going on, and now he won't talk to me. So she approaches him and they sort things out, and he said it was essentially unfair to keep stringing this other girl along when he realized that he was still in love with B. They figure out how to make things work. I enjoyed that so much. One, because I like B. I love how fearless she is, but she is still frail. Like, she's still fragile, even though she will rush headlong into things. And I like that she's learned from her mistakes. She's tried to be a better person. Whereas the other girls, it's like an isolated incident where nothing from the previous books has affected how they're going to behave and grow and mature going forward. So this book, I thought it lacked plot. I thought it lacked development. I thought it lacked character development. I thought it lacked any kind of memorableness. I know that's not a word, but something's going on with my brain and my vocabulary, and sometimes I don't find the words that I want to have right away. I thought the writing was weak, like just the writing style, the structure. It didn't have the same finesse and charm and maturity that the other ones had. I remember what I needed to talk about, what I wanted to talk about, Paul. So at the end of the second book, Lena is devastated that Costas has married another girl. She comes home and ends up going, like, third wheeling it on Carmen's date. And then it turns out that Carmen's stepbrother Paul is also going to be in town. So Carmen's like, oh yeah, you should come on my date too. Then she gets this idea that Lena and Paul should be together, which isn't a bad idea. I like it. Especially because we need something to come into Lena's life. We need another love interest. We need someone who can perhaps get her mind off Costas. And they're a really great match, honestly. Although Paul, I really don't understand how a person can be that quiet. I understand not being verbose. But how does he never have anything to say? So we are left believing that this is what's going to happen. In Girls in Pants, it's like, oh, and that reminds me of something else. In Girls in Pants, it's like Brashares forgot about it or didn't know what to do about it. So she didn't really do anything with it at all. She didn't really address it except to say nothing worked out. Like, nothing happened between them. And really for no good reason. And at least with Lena and Costas, when we learn between books 1 and 2 that they broke up because she was too scared of their relationship, so she broke it off. Like, at least we got that. And that created tension going into the second book. We just knew Lena could not overcome her fears, could not figure out the right things to say to him so as to keep him interested in her. So I'm like, couldn't we have got something like that with Paul, where maybe it's distance, or maybe they just didn't work out, like maybe they weren't compatible anyways. But she says she had never had such a reaction, a physical pull towards someone, not even to Costas, upon first meeting them. So I'm like, physically, you're attracted to him, you're very similar in your demeanors. That could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing, but we don't know. We never get the chance to figure out if you're just incompatible because we're told nothing. When we get into this book, I thought it would have made Lena more interesting, and it would have given her storyline more interest itself, because we want her to get over Costas. We are assuming in this book she's still going to be pining for him. Somehow he's going to play into her narrative. And to combat that is, yeah, let's put something happy in her life. Instead, we get her getting kicked out of art class and at the 11th hour being unable to pay for college. Which is a good storyline in theory, but I felt like it was underwhelming. And the one storyline, B's, that I wish we got more of, I thought we got the least of. I'm sure if I went through this book and counted out, hey, this is how many chapters or scenes each girl got, it would probably even out. But I felt like we concentrated a lot on Carmen and a lot on Lena. And we really got little of Tibby. I mean, honestly, she did nothing in this book. And we didn't get nearly enough of B. But the other thing, in trying to find the other thing that I remembered something else. So let me go with this first. Girls in Pants takes place in the final summer after high school. And so we have a scene in which the girls are gonna go to like this senior party, essentially, and Brian asks Tibby on their first official date. Implying all 4 of these girls go to the same school. However, and this is continuity, people. Has anybody caught this? In the very first book, it says, for some reason, our lives were marked by summers. While Lena and I went to public elementary school, Bridget went to a private school with a bunch of other jocks, and Tibby was still going to Embrace, this tiny weird school where the kids sat in beanbag chairs instead of desks and nobody got any grades. Summer was the time when our lives joined completely. So, I know it says elementary school, but the fact that summer was the only time their lives got to join completely indicates they don't all go to the same school. So how is it that they act like that's all they've ever done? And then my other thing that I remembered and now have forgotten again. So my brain works the way it works, and I can't exactly remember what I wanted to say, but another thing I remembered is I wish that in Girls in Pants I had gotten more of the friendships. This is the first time that the majority of the girls have been in the same place at the same time. Only Bridget left town, and can I please ask, how many of you have worked a sleepaway camp in which they let you go home? Like, she has open weekends? Maybe it's because the kinds of camp I worked were so far away that wasn't a thing, because we did have evenings here or there. I think the only free days we really had were travel days. So maybe I don't really understand what happens when you are stationary at a camp, but who really has the ability to just go home? Especially in this book, I was having a much harder time buying this deep-seated friendship. And I can't quite tell you why. But I think part of it was because I never see them interact. We had a couple of scenes in which the girls, like, got ice cream or something. Or we were told, oh, Bridget came home for the weekend, so we went swimming. Something like that. But we really only see them interact with each other via letters. And I think maybe it's because I disliked this book so much, and I disliked so many of the girls in this book, that I couldn't figure out why they were friends. Like, what did they have in common except a common upbringing? What do they see in each other? What is it? Carmen and Lena were eating ice cream, and Carmen is unloading all of her drama on Lena, and Lena is like giving this really lukewarm advice about what to do, and I was just like, Lena is so uninteresting. And who is she to give advice? If she can't get out a sentence, how is she a valuable member of their friendship? A lot of Lena is internalized, and we get a lot, like, honestly, Carmen, I mean, even B, all 4 girls, a lot of internalization in this book. Very little conversation is happening. Like, they have so many deep thoughts, and I'm just like, I'm tired of hearing what you think. I want to see you in action. But I wanted to see the girls together. I wanted to see them doing stuff, showing me how they get along when they're all so different. Girls in Pants is my least favorite book. And except for B, you could skip this book. because nothing that happens to the other three in this book is going to play into the next two books. I mean, to my recollection. I'm sure there are bits and pieces, except for Tibby and Brian officially being together in the next book, and whatever B's relationship status with Eric is. Nothing that happens in this book comes into play. Even Tibby and Brian, they did get together at the end of this book, but at the same time, it was so fleeting that it's inconsequential. And I thought that would have really made her narrative, her storyline stronger, is instead of everything being so internal. I mean, like, most of the time she's sulking around the house or, like, sleeping at work. And I think if we'd had more about her feelings towards Brian, contrasting with her guilt about Catherine's accident, I think it would have been more interesting. And it's sort of what you do get in the next book. Things happen, and she can't quite reconcile her feelings about the event and her feelings for Brian, and it causes a lot of complications. But we don't get any evolution. And if I were Brian, I'd be like, look, Tibby, it's just like Porter in the second book, where he's like, look, Carmen, I get it. You're not into this, so we'll just let it lie. I wish I'd had Brian come in and be like, so Tibby, I wanted this to work, and you're treating me like crap. So thanks, but no thanks. I'll see you later. I wish I'd had something to keep me going with that, to bridge where we end in book 2 to where we start in book 4. So that's it for today. I am super duper excited to get to book 5, Sisterhood Everlasting. I don't mind book 4, but book 5 is the one that I feel like Brashares has really come into her own and is shining. So I will catch you tomorrow for Forever in Blue, and then I will catch you the day after that for Sisterhood Everlasting. Bye!